Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who've kept us going for over 450 episodes, creeping to 5, really.
We're getting real close. I think we're like this 473, 470. We're somewhere around there. But yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Chris C. Thank you, Chris. Brand new dude, close-ish, I think 1 or 2 months now. So we appreciate you. Thank you. I shaved for the first time this morning since 2017.
How do you feel?
Kind of hurt actually. Like I trimmed everything off, but then I don't know, it was weird. It was like especially like right around here. I don't know.
I don't know. If only we had, someone who made a really good product that could sponsor us and help us out. But I guess no such thing exists. Dang it.
if anybody has a line, let them know. Yeah, although one weird thing of like not shaving for 7-ish years, you forget what your actual face sort of looks like. Like, yes, I've had my hair short many times, but for some reason, like fully shaving makes you look significantly younger, or me like a cancer patient. And so I think that's partially I haven't.
Jesus.
I was not prepared. I also was not prepared for how big my mouth is.
Yeah. Crimson Chin cosplay incoming.
It was huge. I have a hero's jawline. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's good. But anyway, as an aside, we are not talking about shaving body parts this episode.
Dang it.
There's been the Xbox had a showcase.
Yeah, okay. Xbox had a great showcase, and I'm actually I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed in kind of seeing how many people just didn't watch it. We're like, what happened? What? And they're like coming in late, like, what happened? This is really cool. And I'm like, yeah, no. And he's like, I can't be mad because it's Xbox.
I was one of them.
There's a lot of people who just don't really feel the need to get up. But the thing is like at these developers direct, we've had Hi-Fi Rush Shadow dropped. And this time we had Ninja Gaiden 2 Black Shadow dropped, and then the announcement of 4. I mean, and here's the thing, I like having a direct that's actually focused on the developers.
Yeah,
I would personally trim some of the cringy stuff, which is just like developers walking in slow-mo through their office. Yeah, like who cares about that stuff?
How many whiteboard shots were there?
There's so many shots of just someone just kind of like
yeah. Someone just like leaning on a conference table and pointing generally towards progress.
Just dumb. Just dumb. The thing is like I'm not even asking for like, oh, would you want a deeper dive interview, or like, because I know PSX when PlayStation Experience was a thing, and that was a good call, but like like when they would have the couch tables, someone sitting on a couch, like inside the actor's studio, wherever that one interview guy's style is like.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say that either. I think just having snappy or better editing, because I think it's people do want to hear from these developers, and they do want to hear generally what they have to say, but I think they don't want to be like, well, like slow walking, posing. And the other thing is like, we wanted to create the greatest thing ever made. It's like, man, I think people just want to hear just honest, like just straight honesty from their mouth and just straight to the point stuff.
Well, there's 2 things where it's like, one, developers, by the nature of wanting to get into developing video games, a lot of them big old nerds. Yeah. We're all nerds. We consume it. They were big enough nerds that they didn't want to just consume. They jumped into creating. They're not going to be like the best on camera.
Right, which is why I'm just like, stop trying to like make it like a
Rock stars,
weird.
yeah.
Well, they're making it like this weird Discovery Channel documentary kind of. I don't. I'm like, nah, man. Just them talking, and talking about the game and just talking in general is better. Just getting
Right.
them off the cuff, getting them just getting their pure thoughts on the mic is so much better than some of the scripting stuff they do.
That's my what I was getting at was like they're not going to be people that shine in glamour shots. They're going to shine when they're talking about like nuts and bolts.
Right.
When
Yeah.
they're because it's easier to be both charming but also engaging when you're talking about something you are an expert in. And so it's like, don't get these glamour shots of them like walking in slow motion or like, the pointing to
Yeah.
bullshit on don't get that. Get like actual interviews of them talking about like the subject or what they specifically worked on, or
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is always interesting to me.
And that is in there, and it was great.
Well, I mean, think about like that Naughty Dog did that big Last of Us 2 remake documentary talking about level by level. You literally played through like certain
Mhm.
levels that had been like cut, and a developer would talk about key detail. It's one of the coolest things ever. Whether you
Yeah.
like Last of Us 2 or not, it's interesting to hear. It's sort of like old school director's commentary on movies.
Yeah, yeah.
You can learn so much about not only what they're thinking, but how they approach their whole game design philosophy, which is what we're getting at with this episode. Is we're going to talk about philosophies changing. But you know, I wish they did that for. I mean, okay, you can't do it for every game, but like, why the hell isn't there that for uh, not Ghost of Yote, but Ghost of Tsushima? Would have been an
Mm,
interesting having a commentary from the director and lead programmers would have been very cool.
yeah.
Um, any of the major games. I mean, look at Horizon. Would have been a game that would have been sort of amazing to get like world building. What's the philosophy of how they went about building world? Like, what makes sense to make? If everything is robotic, where's the design philosophy between flora and fauna
Yeah,
on
yeah.
robot? Like, there's just so many cool philosophical questions that can be answered by commentary like that. And that's the stuff I think people want in a developer direct, not necessarily weird. One thing those couch conversations suck at is they are clearly very scripted.
Yeah.
When you go to the Xbox in-person showcase that Mike and I went to, it was a very cool experience. But those couch conversations, they were pretty rough around the edges. The host was trying to get the energy levels up, but it was clear that they had very thoroughly discussed what was going to be asked and talked about, or outright handed scripts out before they went on stage. And so it's like, and if they didn't do that, I mean, that just tells you that it was even more awkward than it was
I'm just
planned.
remembering that guy, that translator sweating bullets during the Switch presentation when Suda 5-1 went off script for talking about Travis Strikes Back on the Switch when they were announcing that, and the translator was like like losing their mind because they had a script. They were supposed to go on stage and say a specific thing, and then he went completely off script, and it was the translator was just like you could just hear the sweat just like
Escaping like steam. Yeah. Um, I with the Xbox showcase or the developer showcase, I am one of the people that was guilty of like, well, I'm not going to get up and watch this live. Like, it's going to be more of what they already talked about,
Mhm.
probably. And I didn't expect them to show anything. I expected them to show new stuff or like newer versions of the stuff we had already seen, but I didn't expect them to like blow socks off. And I thought, oh, I'll just watch it later. And then you text me, you're like, did you watch that shit? And I was like, I did not. I saw a couple of little things, and you're like, it was fantastic. Like it was really well done. And I was like, oh, and then went back and watched it. It's like I was already excited about the new Doom and South of Midnight and um, Claire Obscura. Is it Expedition 33 or Claire Obscura?
It is Claire Obscura Expedition 33.
I was already excited about those three. And then now the stuff that they showed gets you even more amped. The shadow drop of Ninja Gaiden, I'm kind of like, all right, Ninja Gaiden's never been my jam necessarily, but
Yeah.
it's a cool move. And it pissed off the worst people on the internet. And that's all I want to say about it. But I do think we're at like a point in time where you're gonna have weird changes in philosophy. Like I said this before we started recording, and this is maybe like this is a real hot take. Microsoft's gonna get out of the hardware game. We've said this before. Maybe it's gonna happen within the next 5 years. I mean, it could happen within the next generation. They might just be like, eh.
Yeah, I actually don't want them to.
I don't want them to either. I think
there is a way forward for them. I think there's two things they need to do, and I think neither one of them neither one of them on paper sound like great ideas financially, but I think, well, you have to play hardball, and you're one of the only companies on earth that can really play hardball. Number one, I think they should, for Series X, drop it $100. I know they're already selling a disk drive less version of the Series X. I actually own one of those now too. But the weird thing is that they're, instead of being cheaper, it has way more internal hard drive space. And I'm like, nobody cares. Like, who cares? Like, you should be offering the Series X at $100 cheaper than Sony. You should undercut Sony's price with hardware parity by $100 because they're beating you 3-1.
right.
Maybe even more. They're beating you 3-1. Just undercut the price. Just do it. It's what they did in Japan, and they've had a little bit of success there. A little bit. The Series S is already cheap. Maybe even drop that $50 just to really drive the point home. Because Series S is the best value console you can get out there right now.
I don't know that they'll do it because they no longer care about ecosystems.
Right. And the other thing, and I said this on stream and I told it to you too as well. Here's what Microsoft should do, whether it's Series X this generation or maybe the next generation. They should have Steam on Xbox. They should make a box that lets you just use your Steam library and has a not Steam Deck, because it's not a Steam Deck, but a Steam box verification. Have a Steam box verification for it, because the thing is, a Series X will run like 99% of the video games on Steam right now. Like, theoretically speaking, like, it'll run most of them. It's not going to run them at the greatest, settings or whatever, right? But we've been saying consoles are already PCs anyway. So I'm saying, like, for the next console, have it literally just be a PC. That's make a deal, cut a deal with Valve somehow, so that you have Steam on Xbox and have like Steam verification for games on Xbox, or just do a Steam Deck where it's like, even if you don't have verification, you can run it and it'll probably work. But you see, because that's the thing, really. Phil was right when he said they lost the worst console generation to lose because everyone built their digital library on PlayStation. So you can't really get people to rebuild their digital library on Xbox.
But you could get a significant chunk of people.
Yeah. Well, what is a bigger digital library,
right,
than PlayStation? It's Steam. Get Steam. Get Steam on your console.
Another interesting idea that you talked about, well, we both talked about it, was this idea of subscriptions to play online. Steam doesn't require you to have a subscription.
Right. There's a lot of roadblocks. I am very aware there are many, many roadblocks that will probably prevent this from ever happening. But probably never happen. But
a somewhat elegant solution that you said before we went live with this was, if you want people to get on Game Pass, make Xbox Gold Game Pass, where it's like, if you have Game Pass, you have access to online.
Yeah, because they have this whole Xbox Ultimate right now, Game Pass Ultimate and Game Pass, PC Game Pass thing or whatever. But I'm like, going online should just not be a cost. You should not have any costs associated with going online. I don't understand why Xbox, because they're so Game Pass oriented, why there's still a subscription to so say you have you're a weirdo. You have an Xbox and you buy your games on Xbox. Say you're one of those weird people. I just played for Madden and Call of Duty. I buy them every year for $70, whatever. I don't actually use Game Pass at all for some reason. But you still have to pay Xbox Live to go online with these games. And I'm like, why? Like, just let's
Right.
honestly, let's just forget that, because that's another way you can undercut Sony, because Sony did that to Microsoft on the PS3. Granted, I know the PS3 eventually overtook Xbox, but yeah, that's just think about it. If you could say you could have a system as powerful as a PS5, it will cost you less, and you will not actually be charged to go online. We will charge you for Game Pass because it's a great service, and and obviously you're just downloading all these hundreds of games. But like, if you just say bought your games on Xbox and you wanted to play them online on Xbox, we're not going to charge you for that. And again, the real gut punch would be like, all right, well, we're going to put Steam on Xbox, and you'll have Steam verification on a bunch of titles, and you could import your entire goddamn digital library of Steam onto Xbox.
Right.
And again, 90%, 99% of what you're playing on Steam will probably run on a Series X, especially if they made like an even more powerful version, or if they did go to a next gen.
I think where you run into problems is there are some games on Steam that probably would not go onto an Xbox, would not, like, Sony, or Sony as
That's
an
the
example,
funny. That's the funny thing, because imagine if they did cut a deal with Valve, right?
right,
So where it's like, okay, we're gonna let Steam be on Xbox because it's just gonna be a PC. Suddenly, Sony first party games are on Xbox.
right. And I don't know how do they then say, well, we're going to pull them from Steam?
I mean,
Hmm.
that only be hurting themselves, really.
Yeah, it would help Microsoft in a way. There's no way for them to win if
And they'll argue like, oh, I could. It would just be funny to see the sort of like screaming and whining that Sony would do, but it would just be funny if like their next console was truly a PC, was a PC console box top, whatever, and it had just sort of big picture mode or whatever, and it's like, well, it's a PC. We're not selling you a new console. It's a PC. You can operate Windows off it if you so choose. You could have that option to just, okay, well, you could run the Windows OS on it. Who cares? It's like a ROG Ally, a ROG Ally X. It's a Windows PC, and I can put Steam on it, and I can play Sony first party games on it.
so mm, I like my PC. I like gaming on my PC, but I've always preferred the console experience for gaming. And part of the reason that I like it that is, like, the OS on a console is specifically built for gaming.
Right,
There's
and
no
and,
wasted.
and all you really have to do is say, because they have it. You know how they have that fee to buy the Xbox developers thing
Mhm.
for Xbox right now, and people would buy it would lock you out of online. It would lock your account from going on to Xbox Live, but you could actually you could throw emulators onto it.
Mhm.
Like, I don't you remember that, because like Series S became the ultimate emulation machine because of it. You could do something similar to that, where it's like, okay, well, you buy the Xbox, right? Let's say, like, we'll call it like, we'll call it the Xbox Steam,
The
and
Steam box.
the Steam box, right? You buy a Steam box, and then it's just sort of like big picture mode, or it's just like it has a console OS. You have to manually go deep into a setting and say, do you want to switch this over to Windows 11? By doing so, you have to, you're agreeing that you are no longer going to have the console experience. It's going to install normal Windows 11 on your piece on the system. You will need to put a mouse in the USB or whatever, right? Like, you have this thing where it's like, it's a PC. You can manually switch it over, but like the
Hmm.
pre-installed thing that you buy and plug in and play is like a normal Xbox. But Steam is there. You can just access your Steam library there.
Yeah. Well, like, if you could just access your Steam library like it's a library on your Xbox, hell yeah. I think that's a win. If it's like, no, the next Xbox is Windows 11 PC that you hook up to your TV, I think that's a loser. That's a loser idea. That's a bad idea.
Well, it's
Uh,
probably well. I only the only reason I bring this up is because they might try to throw legal precedent there might be some legal battle where someone is throwing at you saying that you're
Mm.
circumventing the console industry by offering Steam on a console, thereby making first party games available on a competitor's. But if you say, but it is a PC. In fact, we let you run it as a PC. You optionally can turn it into a PC, right? Maybe I'm just saying for legal purposes, you could have it
Hmm.
there. I don't think anyone would mind.
I It's an interesting problem that we do know somebody that probably knows enough about copyright law to tell us, or at least copyright law within the games industry. He
Yeah.
probably he probably could tell us whether or not that would ever fly. But it is one of those things where you're just kind of like, how has no one at Microsoft ever sort of brainstormed this? Or if they have, it died in the cradle. I wonder what is a world. Phil Spencer isn't there anymore, right?
He's
N-
there, but yeah.
No, I mean, like, but he wouldn't be there for this. He'd
Mm.
move on. It would take fresh blood to come in and be gung ho. I don't think I sort of think that the fight's out of him. He seems like the fight's out of him now. And that could just be my own misread, but who is the new, who's going to come in and try and carry the torch, as it were? And would that be the way they try to carry the torch, the redirect? Because in corporate America, but especially in like tech corporate America, uh, every time somebody new comes into a department, they restructure the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it is often usually switching between like, oh, siloed teams. No more siloed teams. We're all going to be together. And then the next guy comes in and they're all like, oh, all together. No. We're all going to be siloed teams. And that's usually the big switch that happens. It's like a running
Yeah.
joke.
I mean,
Um,
I can see the big problem with Steam on Xbox would be the fact that Steam takes a 30% cut
right.
of every purchase, and Microsoft doesn't want to put someone else's store on their Xbox. They want you, if you're going to buy a video game on Xbox, they want you to buy it from their Windows store because they want that full cut. But at the same time, Microsoft puts game on Steam. So does Sony. So they're already willing to sell you their game on Steam. I can just see, obviously the big problem would just be like, okay, but now we're selling you a literal Xbox that lets you buy from Steam and give away 30% of every game sale to
Right.
Steam. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Because who cares? Like, the thing is that, like, I get it. The whole point of why these companies wanted this digital future was so they could have 100%, of a game sale. But we operated for decades where you were selling games and they were not getting, like, you bought a game for $50, $60. They were not getting the full 50 or 60. It was not going back to Nintendo, wasn't going back to Microsoft.
Yeah.
So that's just like going back to the old days.
It could also be interesting if Microsoft just does a thing where it's like you can access your Steam library, but you're not necessarily buying Steam games.
Right. I mean, that's stupid because you just go on your PC, buy it there, and it's okay. Well, then, all right.
Right. I'm not,
But
but
again,
that
like,
does
this
seem
is,
like a compromise that
to
somebody would.
me, I'm this is it's a drastic measure, but it's a drastic measure in my mind to, how do you overcome someone being 3-1 on you? You can hope that Sony continues to, like, kill themselves with this live service initiative, but, like, the thing is, Sony has good developers. They will probably be able to pivot and turn away from this. They already apparently have.
Sony
So,
has the best AAA narrative developers currently.
right, you can't just expect them to just,
Yeah.
uh we expect them to suddenly do bad. And the thing is like, Microsoft putting games on or on PlayStation and on Switch and Steam and whatever, they're losing that 30% cut there. So I'm just saying that, like, I think the time of fretting about, oh well, people are, if people bought a Steam box and 30% of game sales are going to Steam and not us, I'm like, get over it. Yeah.
Yeah, part of me is still like they may just walk away from hardware altogether. And
Yeah,
that
because that seems
seems
like
more likely.
that seems like the more likely outcome, which is funny because there is talk of a portable. They've openly admitted it,
Mhm.
which I'm almost kind of like, why? The Ally X literally runs on Windows 11, like it is your portable.
Well, yeah, that's I think that's the major problem with the industry for the last 10 years at least, is that they are constantly, what, 4 or 5 years behind a trend,
Yeah,
and they're chasing a trend because, one, development times take so long, but even on hardware, they're behind the trend. You know,
yeah,
when Switch was rumored, and I think we probably have an episode about this, where we were talking about the Switch being rumored to be a handheld. And this must have been like what, 2015,
it's 15, 16.
2016?
Yeah,
Yeah, where we were probably talking about the rumors of the Switch, and people were all like, no, handhelds are, no one wants to get into the handheld. Yeah, and we probably talked about how dumb it is that Microsoft and Sony didn't have anything to answer this. And then the Switch comes out and it's a huge success. And a year later, we probably have an episode where we were talking about how dumb it is that Microsoft and Sony had still not put anything on the table to compete with the Switch. And then the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck, and it comes out, and we probably have an episode in 2020 being like, wow, Microsoft and Sony are so dumb for being behind. And now it's 2025, and now they're like, yeah, there's been discussions. You're 10 years behind. You're 10 what are you doing? Like, I guess, yeah, cool. It is cool. It's cool that handhelds might make a comeback. But if PlayStation releases a Switch-sized or a Sony ROG or a Sony Steam Deck, where it's just basically a handheld PC and nothing about it other than the fact that it's white and has a blue glow, is, particularly stands out. I don't see it doing a whole hell of a lot for him. It's just another PlayStation VR. Microsoft comes out and releases an Xbox handheld that's just, a repackaged ROG Ally. Like, yeah, all right, there's going to be people that buy it, but I don't think it's going to be like a knockout success. It's not going to be something, because most of the people who want those things bought a ROG Ally, bought a
yeah.
Steam Deck,
Well, there's
bought
a weird thing
an
because like
Odie.
the sales of the PlayStation Portal are actually good. Like
Yeah,
it is like the best selling accessory for the year, but it's also, when we're talking like a PlayStation portable system that'll play like say PS5 games, that sucker is going to cost way closer to
$500.
500 to $1,000. Like you're talking about something that's going to be significantly more expensive.
It's one of those things where it's like people complain, or people are like, "Oh, how much is the Switch 2 going to cost?" $400. They're going to undercut the average handheld PC by $100 because they're using older tech. It's still good tech, but it's not, you know,
Yeah.
pushing the same specs that the ROG Ally is or anything like that. And it's going to be good. But Sony can't just come out with something that's good, and they're not really the undercut team. They're not gonna try
Yeah.
and
I mean, they're still trying to sell you, the Rolls Royce, the Cadillac, or whatever
right,
of consoles because they have their PS5 Pro now. Like they're still trying to be, the bougiest of the console manufacturers.
right. And unless they come out with essentially a pocket-sized or thicker cell phone-sized PSP that plays, you know, PS3 games or whatever in quality, like unless they try to do something that is significantly different than the other handhelds on the market, and they won't, because that's
Yeah,
risky.
that's never been Sony's MO, anyways.
Right. But also, no company today is going to take that kind of risk because everybody's deathly afraid of that risk. If Microsoft came out with, you know, a a pocket Xbox handheld, something that's the size of a Windows phone
The X
with,
Boy.
yeah, like an X Boy. And what's a crazy, okay, if you're home you can stream from your Xbox One directly to it like a portal and play Xbox One games. But the Xbox mobile games for outside the house aren't Xbox One quality necessarily. Granted, with cell phones being as powerful as they are now, they probably could do something like that, but it would cost $1,000.
Yeah.
But my point is like, would people pay for a cell phone size pocket handheld that costs $1,000 but plays Xbox One games? Part of me is like, yeah, that's
I don't
pretty
know.
impressive.
I think $1,000 for something that's not a phone is a kind of an impossible ask.
Windows makes phone. Make an Xbox phone. Red Cameras made a cell phone that is a cinema camera as well as a phone. And it's a full featured cinema camera. Okay? Like, and people were willing to pay like 3 or 4 grand for one of those. Which you should never do. Black Magic Cinema exists. But my point is like, if you are Xbox and you come out with a cell phone sized Xbox phone, and you're all like, yeah, it's $1,000. It's a fully featured smartphone that also plays Xbox One games. I do think that there are people that would pay for that.
One or Series X. One thing
Or
though
Series X, yeah, sorry.
one thing we have learned though,
They're all the
unfortunately,
same friggin' name.
through Capcom, is that people are not willing to pay full price for console quality games on their phone.
That yes,
The Resident Evil 7, 8, well, granted they are late. 7, 8, and 4 ports on iPhone. Wow, those are really low sales numbers. But again, it is a phone
yes.
without any buttons or analog sticks or whatever. But
Right. Yeah. If you had a way to play them, that's the hardest thing about making a pocket console is having an interface that works. One of the things about the PSP, which I found my PSP in my things recently, but one of the things about the PSP is it's like, oh, it's a phone sized handheld with a good, not great, but a good controller layout.
yeah,
Now analog sticks of that size are way better, and you know
it's
and now you wouldn't even put a UMD on it. It'd be entirely solid state, so all that room that was for the drive could just be for computing power.
yeah.
you know
Well, the answer is we got to bring the N gauge back.
I mean, the N-Gage was the ultimate in entertainment technology. The N-Gage
Gotta
2 is the only thing that beat it. You know the one thing that always confused me about the N-Gage more than any of the other things about the N-Gage. Some engineer looked at it and was all like, "Yes," and then you will talk into it like a taco.
side talking, baby. Let's
I
go.
of all the things,
Side talk.
of all the things,
Yeah.
yeah, like eh, eh, whose idea? I think that is the number one thing that killed it.
The side talk meme.
Yeah, I do. I
Wait, you
think,
don't think you look cool like talking to someone like this?
yeah, yeah, I think you look super cool, and you should do it the rest of the episode.
And
Now we knew a man who had an N-Gage. Uh,
they
we knew
tried to
some.
and they tried to course correct with the QD. Remember where like they put so you would actually like put it like the screen against
They
you.
did, yeah, but by then they had already dug the grave.
Yes.
you know. And the thing about graves is you fill them. Like nobody's nobody's just gonna leave a dug grave.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, my capture card freaked out there when I put the switch back in the dock.
no worries. Um, one thing that like, do you remember? Did you ever play any of the games on the Engage?
Yeah, one great. I mean,
Yeah, it was
it was kind of impressive. I mean, the tech was impressive because we were
well
looking
for
at
the size. Yeah, yeah,
and we were looking at PS1 games, on a taco in like 2004 or whatever.
and like truly pocket size. Like it was in your
Yeah,
hand. Like it was the size of a hand. It
the
wasn't.
cutie was even smaller. You know,
I don't think
it,
anyone that listens to this is young enough that they don't remember the Engage.
oh, I don't know, but
Oh,
but I mean, the thing was like
yeah,
they
fine.
had Tomb Raider 1 and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1
Right.
and Pandemonium for the 3 people who played that game.
Well, Tony
PlayStation.
Hawk is the only one that I played on the Engage.
Yeah, and Sonic Engage, which was Sonic Advance 1, but that was way less impressive. The biggest problem was also the vertical screen because the screen was,
Weird,
vertically
yeah.
taller than it was horizontally wider, which made playing a lot of games kind of a nightmare. Tony
Well,
Hawk didn't suffer that though. because it's Tony Hawk.
And the screen, you don't need super wide vision for that game. Well, the thing that I always wonder about is why did they make it taco shaped? They could have. Uh, is the idea that the taco shape was better for the hands? Because it
Well,
wasn't in my
because
hands. My
you
hands was
were
uncomfortable.
playing it like a Game Boy Advance. The D pad on the left, the buttons on the right. You're
Right.
playing it like this. The thing is that if you're asking why did they put the speaker and microphone on the top where the shoulder buttons would go,
But I mean, like, just generally from holding the taco. Like, my hands are fairly big, and holding a taco shaped. The Game Boy Advance was not taco shaped. The original Game Boy Advance was more like a rounded off square or a rounded off rectangle. The
yeah.
N-Gage had that sharp taco shell. So like your bottom fingers were like this.
See, is Nokia like Japanese or European or is it Korean or is it Japanese or
Actually,
European?
I am not
I don't know.
sure.
I don't know who the developer of the design, or you had to ask the designer of the N-Gage. Actually, this is a bit of gaming history. I don't really
Finland.
know.
They're
Y-
Finnish.
I thought it was. I thought it was like a Norwegian company.
They are headquartered in Espoo.
Okay. Okay. So my thought was right. I'm like, okay, so they were a European company.
Yeah.
I don't know if that explains anything, but I don't know. Maybe it was a trend going on in Finland at the time. I don't really know.
Well, it's just like one of those weird whose hands are this designed for? Like the OG Game
Finish.
Boy. Yeah, or I guess I've only ever met one person from Finland, and he did not have small hands. Granted, he was like fresh out of their military. It was, but he was like a normal proportion. He did have no, he was like a normally proportioned. The Engage would have been uncomfortable for this man. I don't know overall the Finnish. I haven't known enough Finnish people, I guess, to say one way or the other. Like
It's not like
Japanese
it is.
design stuff for
It's not
small
like
hands.
yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not like it took off in Finland either. It didn't take off
No,
anywhere. So
it crashed and burned everywhere. But like my point is like the original Game Boy was this big honky brick, right? Like it was just huge,
yeah, Brick Boy.
so comfortable to hold, even when I had smaller hands because like you could hold on to it. The Game Boy Color had that like weird hump on the back where the
Yeah, on the
batteries
back.
went, which
Yep.
made it okay to hold. Like it made it fairly okay to hold.
But do you remember the Game Boy Pocket before the Color, which
My
was
God.
didn't have that because it was
No.
AAA batteries and it was really skinny.
Yeah, and the battery lasted like nothing.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think the battery was good. On the, God, it's been so long since I played a Pocket. I don't remember.
I remember a friend of mine had to bring an extra set of batteries if he brought it anywhere with him.
I don't know, man. Nintendo always dominated on battery life because they had no backlight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when was the first backlight? It was the
Game Boy Advance SP.
Yeah, it was the SP. Yeah, because the original Game Boy Advance didn't have backlight. It was
And it
garbage.
was front light. It wasn't even
Yeah.
a backlight. It was actually a front light on the SP. And then there's a super rare model of the SP near the end of its life where they actually did a proper backlight on the SP. They're hard to find. They're hard to come by. They're worth
Is
a
that the
lot.
one that had like the retro look to it?
No, like the thing was is like they're on various multiple normal colored
Hmm.
SPs, but like
I think
they
my brother
only
has one of those.
it was on the ass end of the lifespan of the Game Boy Advance. So
Yeah, he
it's
bought
back there.
one. He owned 3 Game Boy SPs at various different times, and right at the end of its lifespan, he bought one that it's still in the box.
Mm,
Because he up until you remember when we were at Justin's wedding and my car got
yeah.
broken into, and my brother's entire Game Boy collection
Yep.
of Game Boy Advance games that he used to keep in like a pencil case with him where you play it got stolen. But he I think he has since built up his collection again. But he right at the end of the SP's life, he was like, "Well, I'm going to buy another one just in case my SP dies." And so he has this Game Boy SP that is in its box, still with the tape that is
Mm.
in his old bedroom's closet at my parents' house. When we were moving, when we were packing everything to move, I found it and I was like, "Hey Phil, do you want this?" And he was like, "Yes, leave it where it's at. It is there so that it does not get damaged. And I was like, is it a collector's item? He's like, no, just well, maybe it
But
is
it
now, but he was like, no, it's just in case I want to play Game Boy game. And I was like, okay. It's just,
if it is the backlit SP, it's actually probably worth a fair bit. I mean, even SPs are worth pretty good money now, but like a backlit, an unopened backlit SP, yeah, you could get some money for that.
I mean, the 3DS size or like the late stage DS size of handheld, that like design and size is peak Game Boy in my mind. Where like you could take it with you everywhere. The DS games weren't very big, but the SP before it was sort of peak Game Boy. You could literally slide it in your pocket, take it with you wherever. It was great. Um, but also, I mean, you think going through a person's childhood bedroom, you're gonna stumble upon like, I don't know, a porn mag or something hidden away. No, it's a Game Boy SP in a box, untouched.
Yeah, it's worth
What a
about
nerd.
it's worth about $1,300.
I should tell him that. Actually, you know what?
14.
I'm not gonna tell him that. Then he'll open it and then I'll tell him that.
We got oh, do you know what it goes down to? Open 400. You're literally gonna knock like nearly $1,000 off it if he opens it.
He won't sell it anyway. He'll open it to play it.
It's
He doesn't care.
if he gets it graded, he could get it to 1,400.
My God. I'm uh I'm a monster, but I'm not that much of a monster.
Well, anyways, I think generally philosophy wise, as we're kind of getting here. Anyways, it was interesting to watch this Xbox Developer Direct and then the big Phil Spencer interview afterwards, which were not related, but kind of related, where he talks about, he basically says like, yes, everything is on the table, nothing is going to be staying Xbox exclusive. um there's just there, and they still have philosophy on how they still want people to buy their hardware, but yada yada. A lot of people are like, well, what's the point if you're just going to eventually put everything on PlayStation anyways? And he was saying, kind of like echoing like, oh well, we feel like our hardware is the best place to play, whatever. It's just
They're getting out of the hardware game.
it's lip service, whatever.
They're
But
getting out of the hardware game so fast.
Here's the thing, though. I look at that developer direct, right? And okay, it's only 4 games, 5 technically if you count the Shadow Drop, but which, by the way, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black beat it. Not very hard on normal.
Certain assholes on the internet wouldn't agree with you.
That's why they're assholes.
Certain gaping, bruised buttholes wouldn't agree with you.
But anyway, so look at what the 4 games we had. We had a game that was okay. It's a 40-year-old franchise getting a new old Japanese franchise from the NES era getting an update. You had South of Midnight, which is meant to emulate claymation style action adventure
It
game
looks so cool.
set in a gothic horror fantasy deep south. That doesn't go on any sort of like billboard for or bullet point for this is what people want: live service, gas, monetization. Nothing there for that. It's a single player, like I said, single player adventure game through a gothic horror fantasy version of the Deep South.
It's one of the most interesting ideas that Xbox has come out with in 5 years, 6 years.
And then you have a French-made JRPG, turn-based JRPG with a stellar voice cast, but like it's very, very much trying to make a modern day version of a PS1 RPG, turn-based RPG. It has a world map and stuff, and everything's all weird and French and gay and on fire all at the same time. Yes, that's it is a Cirque du Soleil show with Andy Serkis.
I am confused by it because generally speaking, turn-based JRPGs not my jam, and yet I am so intrigued by this game.
Right? Yeah. So that's not something you sit there and think, oh yeah, 20 million seller there.
Confusing me sexually.
And then the last game, the only game that's actually somewhat of okay, this is Doom: The Dark Ages, a weird fantasy prequel. I have no idea what's going on with the Doom lore, and I don't really care, and I think it's stupid that they're even trying, but whatever. But
well, there is no Doom lore. You're thinking about it, don't think about it.
Don't think about it.
There's one,
but there's a lot of
there's one line of lore. There's one thing of lore that you have to remember about Doom. The Doom Marine is so bloodthirsty, so vicious, so terrifying that hell has written legends about him being the monster in the dark.
Right.
Everything else, timeline, stories, characters, doesn't matter. Don't think about it too much. It's there for flavor. There's only one element of lore, and that is rip and tear so hard that demons are afraid of their closets at night because you're in there.
Rip and tear until it's done.
Okay? But that's all the lore is. And anybody who tells you different, and any YouTubers that make deep dives on Doom lore, they're all liars and fools. And I don't care. I don't care what beefs I'm starting right now. Fuck them and fuck everything they've ever done.
That being said, every single one of these 4/5 games looked great. Doom looked great. They are going more boots on the ground. They're abandoning the jumping and hook shotting in favor of Captain America's shield.
Hell yeah.
I do think the death kills look a little floaty and a little like he's shadow boxing the air in front of him and people are disintegrating. But whatever. The game actually they have sliders for like parry windows, which I think is fantastic. Love it.
Oh, that's cool.
Love all the things they're doing because they're basically making the game about strafing. They said the whole idea is they wanted to bring strafing back as like a main mechanic. Cool. Look great. Doom the Dark Ages look, and they have mechs and they have dragon fights where it goes all Panzer Dragoon on you now on a cyber dragon. So it's like, okay, yeah, the game looks great, right? All of it looks great. Every one of these games looks fantastic.
And really quick, what's the lore about why there's cyber dragons?
I don't.
It doesn't matter. There's only one line of lore. There's cyber dragons because you're there to terrify them.
Right.
That's it.
So Doom Dark Ages, that is coming on PlayStation 5. And Claire Obscura is not an Xbox game, but it is going to be on Game Pass. I'm probably the most excited for that one. That's probably the one. And there's a line during the developer direct which I loved, where they're like, we made it so every single attack an enemy does can be blocked or avoided with proper timing. And he said it was really hard to balance the battle system initially because we found many people at the team who were good at action games were having were having fun with the game, but everyone who was used to turn-based was struggling really hard with the game. And I'm like, fuck them. Like learn to press a button in time.
I don't even really like parrying mechanics that much.
So they're like, so we built all these things you can equip and stat things you can do. So if you wanted to play the game much more from a statistical point of view, you could. So they added all that, and they showed like all these, like there's hundreds of different ways you can equip and load out your character if you're not good at the real time stuff. I'm like, fucking babies, like it's fantastic. You mean I can parry, dodge, and counter like everything in the game? That's awesome.
I will be playing like a baby, I guess. Well, I don't know. If it's more action packed the other way, I'll do action just to avoid the turn based stuff as much as possible. But
I mean, it is still going to be a turn based battle, but it's just like when
you
the
can
enemy
like parry when they attack.
yeah, you can block. You can do like perfect blocks and parries and dodges when the enemies attack. And I'm like, excellent. Like, because that's the thing is I can't stand normal turn based. I need sauce, man. Like playing a turn-based game with no pizzazz like this is like eating at a Whataburger. It's like the driest, nastiest cafeteria high school burger you've ever had. No flavor, no sauce, no nothing.
Whataburger is it's the most fine of the fast food burgers.
I don't even say it's fine. It's the worst burger I've ever had in fast food.
I don't know. The patty melt's okay, but
yeah, well, because I went to Vegas and I tried the Whataburger there, and I'm like, it was the saddest, driest thing. Like, dude, this thing was drier than Ben Shapiro's wife. It was just awful. But then I got this thing which was like a melt where it had like mozzarella sticks and chicken on bread, and it was good. But you know what it was? It was literally 2 slices of sandwich wheat bread and mozzarella. Like, I could have assembled this at a market.
No, you know what the good is? There's like Zaxby's and Bojangles down here.
Well, I've seen both of them in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, Zaxby's is like a God, what's the Raising Canes that you love? So it is literally it's just Raising Canes, but this side of the country. They have like their Zax sauce instead of cane sauce, and it's basically the same.
Yeah, I've never eaten there. I've always just walked by it when I'm in Atlanta.
It's good. It's fine. They do Texas toast. They do. I mean, it is and they do cheese curds and all that stuff. It's Raising Canes, but it's Eastern United
This is
States.
now a food podcast, but
Yeah. Bojangles I haven't tried yet, but everybody raves about it.
mm,
And it's like chicken and seafood or something, possibly.
makes sense. Maybe
I'm
it's
not.
a little Cajun, maybe. But yeah, like the thing is, I can't stand turn based unless there's like some sauce to it, which is why I could beat Sea of Stars, but I had a tough time and gave up on something like Chained Echoes, which is supposedly very good. I mean, it was good. I just, man, I don't know. I need something more going on in my battle system than just like attack.
I
They
like
attack you,
turn-based
you attack them.
strategy games, like Tactics Ogre
Well,
and stuff like that. I
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. When they're all just standing in a line and you select from a menu, that's where I get
Right,
like
like I say, like turn-based battle system has as much gameplay as using an ATM machine.
my brother loves it. So I'm not gonna sit and say like I don't understand it. Like he's explained several times that he says that it's strategy anyway,
oh,
and like how
definitely. I mean,
fast you can get through the menus and stuff like that.
there is
It just
strategy.
doesn't interest me.
I'm just not gonna. I'm not denying that, but man, it's boring.
Yeah,
It's just
I find it boring. Yeah.
selecting from a menu, and you just do that enough so that your character levels up so much that you don't have to think.
I really don't like grinding in general.
Right.
I've said that before, and a key feature of a lot of those old school RPGs and JRPGs is like grinding like crazy. Um, God, I mean, even MMOs. God, grinding in MMOs, and people
Yeah.
who love grinding, a special breed. Genuinely, I have no idea. Like it's I'm not a patient person. I know, like, I try my best to be patient about a whole lot of things that I'm not. I'm definitely not a patient person when I'm trying to have fun or relax. Like, the first time that I played WoW, I signed in and my brother was like, "Yeah, we're just gonna go over to this field and kill boars for the next 2 hours." And I was like, "What about that is fun?" And he was like, "Yeah, but if you get to this level or whatever, then I'll be able to give you some equipment and we'll go run the first dungeon." I was like, "I can't do a dungeon until a couple hours into the game." And he's like, "Well, a couple hours, and then we got to do this thing to get you this equipment." And I was like, "I'm done. Thank you. No, thank you."
Dang, Andrew.
No, I played it for like
How much
2
did you
weeks.
prestige though in Call of Duty?
In Call of Duty, I hit 10th level prestige every single game until
See, you love grinding there.
but that's not correct. In Call of Duty 4, I hit 10th prestige in I don't know, I can't even remember now, but so friggin' fast just by playing Search and Destroy because you got
Well,
so many
you
points.
played that game an awful lot.
I
You were
played it.
like, I think you were one of the most consistent people online. I remember that. I was like,
I
well, I'm
it's
like,
it
Andrew's on. He's usually on.
the only my only claim to gaming fame is that for a very short period of time on COD 4 on Xbox 360, I was number 1 in the world for score. For this just this little amount, okay? But also I was like 18, 19.
With
I had a lot of free
shit all to do with your
I was I had a lot of
Speaking
time.
of the Activision, I think to sort of like bring all this around, and like the point of this is like I think Xbox is in an interesting spot because there's other games coming out from them soon that weren't here. Avowed, Fable, Perfect Dark. There will be another Forza Horizon there somewhere. Clockwork Revolution. So on and so forth. Right. Microsoft is actually sort of embracing a sort of okay, what do you want to do mentality with their developers. They definitely
Mhm.
felt a lot of probably kickback from getting rid of Tango and getting rid of uh I was gonna say Devolver, it's not Devolver, Dishonored devs, Arcane Austin.
Right.
Um and that was probably a very, very bad idea on their part. But either way, like it's interesting that they have the interesting games right now because we don't really know what's going on. We know Sony's got Ghost of Yotei and Intergalactic, and both look awesome. But we also know is that they're canceling a bunch of live service games because they're all failures, or because they would probably all fail, like Concord, like completely imploded. Astrobot's a
Mhm.
great game, but it's sort of like a on Oasis for them right now. Like they're very weird. They're slow and they're not talking about stuff. But Sony, I'm sure, is going to be just fine though in the end, because the faster they basically drop this and run away, the better. But that being all said, Sony has definitely seemed to be operating on a does this sell standpoint. Like, and they're turning it around now. But like, okay, God of War sells 10, 20 million copies, make a sequel. Horizon sells 20 million copies, make a sequel. Spider-Man sells 20 million copies, make a sequel. All good games, all good sequels. Ghost of Tsushima sells a lot. It's getting a sequel, of course. And then there's like this weird thing in the background. They're like, well, what if we had a God of War live service game? What if we had like 12 live service games? And it's like, what if you didn't have 12 live service games?
But also, if you have 12 live service games, what audience do you think you're cannibalizing for each game? Can you take the audience that is playing the shit out of, say, like your live service games that are going right now, or game that's going right now, um, you know, and cannibalize that into 12 different
Yeah,
games?
I don't even
What's the
understand. Like, was it just like, okay, well, we'll have 12 and like a couple of them be so successful it won't matter the others, but you still shut down those who don't succeed.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what their strategy was there. I do think that maybe it's that same overzealous, like, oh, it's easy money.
Yeah.
Where like they saw one live service game make bank, and then
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh, it's easy money. This is the thing we're gonna get. We're gonna go all in on it."
Hmm.
It screams of a person with no imagination.
And the extreme example of that is a Microsoft now owned developer, and that was Activision and EA. They have, frankly, Activision had no vision. Activision had no vision for years.
Well, Bobby got it.
Activision was find a successful formula, drive it into the ground. Did it with Tony Hawk, did it with Spyro, Skylanders, did it with Guitar Hero.
Did it with everything Blizzard ever did.
Yeah, did everything Blizzard ever did, and then somehow COD somehow survives. COD is like the zombie that won't die kind of thing. But
Well,
they're trying to drive it into the ground. They've done their best to drive COD into the ground. And you can see it, because what did Activision's portfolio look like? What does Activision's portfolio look like for like 15 years? Granted, like
right.
the odd Crash Bandicoot here or there or whatever, right? It's Call of Duty. You would go to E3 and their booth would be a giant ass booth that one side was Call of Duty and one side was Destiny before they sold Destiny off.
I think one of the biggest problems with shooters right now is that Call of Duty has taken up so much brand space that not a lot of other shooters get the attention,
Yeah.
you know,
And
to
I
take.
guess, well, the thing is, my point is too, Activision didn't got to a point where Activision didn't care at all, one way or another, about what it was doing, what
Right.
its developers were making. There wasn't any like, hey, you want to make a
Mhm.
game like Gun, like an old Western? Yeah, no, all that goes away. Like,
But I do think the Call of Duty fatigue is starting to actually be a thing.
no, not when I look at like the year over year, like what is the best selling game of 2024? Call of Duty.
Well, yeah, but like also Madden and FIFA, were
Somehow they slipped worse than COD.
well, yeah. My point is though is that like part of it is Call of Duty as a brand is starting to have fatigue. Like it's gonna hit a wall.
It has to eventually, but my point is that like before the buyout, Activision pretty much was a
Call of Duty company. Yeah,
well, it
that's
was
all
a,
they
yeah,
made.
well, it was a numbers company. They didn't care about. There was no interest in trying to have like a bunch of like quirky or oddball games. Like they're just like, we make Call of Duty.
Which is odd because with the success that they were having with Call of Duty, they were exactly the person that could take big swings
Yeah, yeah, they
and
could.
make huge hits.
But everyone just goes into Call of Duty mines.
Oh,
In the opposite example of that is still kind of Nintendo, because Nintendo still makes a bunch of small games, small project games.
yeah, but Nintendo makes no big swings.
But you know what it also means?
They do a lot of little swings.
Nintendo also never has to worry about buyouts or needing to sell or anything like that,
Totally true.
because
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't take games that cost $1 billion to make or run. I just
Right.
make a bunch of little tiny things, and they don't all hit, but they all hit enough. But collectively, they all hit just enough, and some of them really hit. Because then Mario Kart 8, a port of a Wii U game, sells 60 million copies, and then Breath of the Wild sells 30, and Animal Crossing sells 45. Like they didn't cost nothing, but they sure didn't cost COD numbers.
What was the last completely new franchise that Nintendo started?
I want to say Splatoon, but I can't. I'm trying to think of. Well, I mean, there's 1-2 Switch. It's a
Yeah, there's one.
franchise.
There's
Two
one two
games.
switch. There's the
There's
there's
two
the
games in
beat
it.
'em up. What's the fighting game with the spring arms? What was that called?
Arms,
Arms.
arms.
Yeah. Uh,
That's newer than Splatoon.
yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, what was the last? Like they do take swings. They just
Yeah.
don't. They're just not necessarily like Activision could have taken big swings. Like they could have done like true triple A.
Hmm.
You know, I don't know, narrative, or they
There's a
could have
lot of.
they could have tried to eat Naughty Dog's lunch. They
They
had
could
the
have.
talent, they had the money, they just never did.
They even
And
had the
I think
devs in the same
Microsoft is
area.
yeah, it's across the street.
Yeah, they could have poached talent left and right from
Yeah.
Naughty Dog if they wanted to, but they just nah. COD was making all the money, so everything goes in, funnel everything into the thing that makes money, and only that. And I think that's a short-term gains, but I think it's a long-term destructive way to run a company.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I mean, well, look at what was the last big shift in shooter trends was battle royale, and that was born out of um
BR or hero shooters, I guess.
well, hero shooters was before BR,
I
right? Wasn't it?
guess,
What BR came
because
after the
I guess
hero
hero
shooter?
shooters are like a weird evolution of MOBA. Honestly,
Right. And BR was born entirely out of you know, programmers basically messing with like DayZ is an Arma
yeah, Arma to DayZ to battle royale. Yeah, it all came from that sort of.
right. They're just modders that came up with those ideas. Um, you know, when's the last time that Blizzard or Activision truly were like, here's a new idea and here's all the cards. Like they put all the chips
Yeah,
rather.
because people you can say, well,
on it.
Overwatch was their last big idea. I'm like, it wasn't really though.
Well, I mean, it was, but it was still a pretty safe
It
move.
was
Like,
it was the remnants of a canceled MMO.
oh, I didn't know that actually. I didn't know that it
Oh,
was
you didn't know that? Yeah.
no. I thought it was just them looking at like things like League of Legends and being
They were
like, how do
making
I?
this they're making a sci-fi MMO, and then that didn't happen, and then the team basically scrambled to put something else together, and that was
Huh.
Overwatch.
I mean, I think that's sort of beautiful, actually. Uh,
It's almost like Apex Legends in a weird sort of way.
oh, yeah, that's true. So what I'm getting at to close out with is Microsoft is further down this line of like we have no new ideas because we've been chasing old trends. And so now this last direct seems like it's nothing is South of Midnight is kind of fresh.
South of
Um
Midnight's really out there, and
it
then
is very fresh. So I don't want to say that nothing's fresh, but like it is
Hi-Fi Rush was. Yeah.
Hi-Fi Rush was fresh, but like they're in that mode where now they're like, oh, okay, we've got to take swings. Sony hasn't hit that yet. One, Naughty Dog is sort of taking a swing, I guess, with Intergalactic. Like, kind of. We haven't seen enough to know for sure.
Yeah.
But like,
They did cancel their multiplayer game.
right. Sony hasn't had enough of a slap in the face yet, it seems like, where they're going to be like, oh, okay, I guess we got to actually like try to create new things and have new ideas. When I say new ideas, I don't just mean like, you know, new old
Right.
IP.
And a lot of people would say, like, well, Concord was a new IP. I'm like, Concord was a hero shooter.
Yeah, it wasn't a new idea, it was a new IP. I'm talking about just like a new idea, like some sort of swing.
This was
And
where this was what the PSP was really good at, with Loco
yeah.
Roco and Patapon, and if you had a Vita, Little Deviants on Vita
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff. Right, great game, right? So create like Puppeteer, Tearaway, Gravity Rush. Yes, these are all like Sony Japan games that they basically got rid of, and Team Asobi's the only thing left over from that. But I mean, like, that's on you, Sony. And in I think it was Sean Layden had a very candid interview not too long ago where he was kind of talking about, yeah, like it was rough. You keep making all these games and they all just keep failing and fizzling out everywhere, worldwide, and it's like that eventually that eats at your morale. And Sony did eventually cancel the studio because they just couldn't produce a hit.
Well,
But
it eats
that's
it
and
eats at
that's
morale, but also like that has to be a clear sign that something has to change.
yeah, but I
That
think that was
you're
stupid of Sony to I'm very much on the team fuck Sony for getting rid of Japan studio. You make enough money to offset these losses, and most of these losses were Vita and PSP games. They
right. So
weren't
not big.
you
Yeah.
weren't you weren't these are not Concord level of disasters. And again, eventually they were going
Nothing
to
is.
like eventually they were going to find a hit, and that hit was Astrobot because that was the remnants of Japan Studio reformed into Team Asobi. So yeah, they eventually found their groove, which I think is the most important thing is don't throw a whole dev out because they had one bad, I guess in
A
Team
string.
Japan. Okay, to be fair, Japan Studio had a string of failures, not one failure. So I mean,
Part of me
I,
is thinking Sony will take the wrong lesson of from the Astrobot win, and like now
oh,
Team Toby
absolutely.
is working on a live services Astrobot.
Yeah, can we make a live service Astrobot game? I think it would go really well. We could
You just
sell.
keep buying costumes for your
Yeah, you could.
Astrobot.
We could monetize the costumes Astrobot sells, so all the little players you're playing multiplayer with will all have their own bought and paid for Sony icon costumes. I'm like, you could just see the gears spinning in Sony execs' heads right now, and it's like, oh man, wait, man, I think we might have predicted that. If that happens, you heard it here first. You heard it. Andrew said it first.
And I
Um,
hate it. I hate that for me. I hate that for all of us.
But I do think Microsoft might be turning a corner a little bit and realizing that you need variety, not bullet point games, not games designed by committee. Designed by committee is awful.
It always
Um,
does awful, yeah. I do
there's
think, yes, they're turning a point there. I am now sort of very worried that they're going to get out of the
there's a
harbor again.
really terrible talking point that's been sort of hijacked, and I guess I won't even say what it is. Well, I guess I could, but like I think it's the point of it's being lost completely. And because some people think like, oh, if you a game made for everyone is a game made for no one, and I know it's kind of a dog whistle nowadays, but I think the true taking that at its face value is there is truth in the sense of like the thing is if you want to make a game like South of Midnight, you should. We should be game companies like Microsoft. If you own 20 studios and you're Microsoft and you're not hurting for cash, you should be taking these swings.
But when they say a game made for everyone is a game made for no one, like that's a marketing thing where it's like, oh, if you have no target market, it's not actually going to sell to anyone because no one's going to be interested. So what's I guess I'm ignorant of what the dog was. Is that like Chud's
Chuds are using it as sort of like an example for Concord's failure and stuff like that, which is like it basically they're interpreting it as like the opposite of what it's saying, um, in a
uh,
sense.
sorry. I was just sort of curious about how that
The
was being
point, well, the
presented.
point is that like when someone makes a game, when people try to make a game inclusive for everyone, it's for no one, which is again like
There's a black woman protagonist. Who's this for?
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well,
You get where they're going with that, for
yeah.
Spaken and Spoken and whatever.
Well, Forspoken was actually bad.
That's the thing.
It was a bad
That's
game.
the thing. The game was boring.
It was a bad game, but
Like straight up, it was a boring game. Like it looked pretty, but it was boring.
I I I don't know. I think that the
But no,
loudest
like
voices on the internet now are all these jackasses that they're maximalists. They only go to extremes.
right. Well, the point
You
is
know.
though, is that like I think it's a dumb I think it's a dumb philosophy to sit there and like, your game is made for no one if it's not, if it's made for everyone. And I'm like, no, I think games are better when we have games that are okay. Not everyone's going to like turn-based. I don't like turn-based. You don't like turn-based, but I'm still interested in Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's not made for everyone. Claire Obscure is not made for everyone. This is again, you're making a game that's basically a JRPG of Cirque du Soleil. Who's this made for? Turbo nerds, turbo nerds in that love Japanese games or love weird European aesthetics. But I'm like, but you know what? Maybe it's successful. Maybe it finds a big success. You know,
Um,
like
I-
Animal Crossing, there's no killing, there's no shooting, you don't do anything, there's no end game goal. There's like it's a game about nothing, Jerry. And what is it? It sells like 45 million copies. So I think the idea people have in their heads, that the games I don't agree with the philosophy of a game made for everyone is or whatever I think it's stupid. I think developers should make the game they want to play. I think
right.
that is the truth here. And that's why you have a games like Infinity Nikki, which is taking off because a Breath of the Wild designer really wanted to make a Breath of the Wild game that was all about fashion. So he did, and he made a girly fashion Breath of the Wild, and it's actually blowing up.
Yeah,
Is
it
that
blows
game
me
for?
away how people love that.
And it's like, is that a game made for everyone? Hell no. But you know what it was? It was a game made for that the developer wanted to play. So guess what? The audience was there. It's more of a build it if you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
Mentality.
well, I mean, for instance, like if you're in like a writing class, they'll tell you like, oh, uh, write this like you're talking to someone specifically. Think of who you are specifically speaking to,
Yeah.
and it will infinitely make the product of your writing better. Like, and pretty instantaneously. Same thing with any type of like if you're making a film, any type of film, who are you making that like who is the audience member? The audience member, the one person. Now, granted, the
Hmm.
director is supposed to be the surrogate for the audience, right? On set.
Yeah.
That's who the director is. But it's like who's that one audience member that you have in mind? Because nobody's a snowflake. Nobody is, so when you target a specific person, you're actually targeting a specific market.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
here's
mean?
the thing: people are dumb. Don't get me wrong. Humanity is a mistake, but people recognize when something is a product versus when something like is made with like authoritarian intent like when you play a near game, even if you don't get what's going on in near, it's like, well, this is a personal game, like someone had
Right.
something to say. Even if you misinterpret it, you'll know when something is more personal than when something is I'm just making a game about shooting things. And again, sometimes you're not again we're not going to get anything out of Doom or whatever. But if you're making a narrative driven game experience, for example, people will tell if your game's been run through a committee,
Yeah.
or
All
or
your
or
edges are
or
softened.
yeah, or if this is a game that's like, okay, well, this was clearly one dude's vision of something, and people respect it more when it feels like there's a personal touch to something rather than this was done by committee. We made sure we made sure that this was a safe and an enjoyable game for every popcorn eating jackass out there, kind of thing.
Especially for our marketing allies, our
Yeah,
friends in the marketing. So yeah,
you're Morbius. you know,
it is still one of the most impressive feats of trolling that has ever happened that they got Sony to release Morbius a second time.
twice. Yeah.
On that note, on that happy trolling note, we've got some producers to thank. But maybe you think that gaming philosophy has shifted entirely in the last, say, 5 years. I think there has been a shift. Let us know in the YouTube comments, or on the Twitters. Although I'm not on that as often, you can hit me on Blue Sky. Same name or whatever, but I switch back and forth. I don't know. But as always, we've got patrons to thank, and our producers for this episode are Dragonwolf Makoto, Osnight, Zybernite, Scrunami, Koroi35, Hyperviper89, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes. We'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.